The Hero with 1,000 Faces is a seminal work by Joseph Campbell that explores the archetypal journey of the hero in myths and religions from around the world. Published in 1949, the book has become a classic in the fields of comparative mythology, psychology, and storytelling, and it has inspired generations of both readers and writers alike. In this video, we shall explore the first half of Campbell's book, which concerns the adventure of the hero, or rather, the hero's journey. By understanding the role played by myths and symbols in various cultures, Campbell will reveal the ultimate meaning behind our stories and indeed our lives as human beings, which is the transformative power of facing one's fears and discovering our deeper purpose. Prologue: The Monomyth. Myth and Dream. Myths have persisted everywhere and always, shaping human culture. They arise spontaneously from the psyche and cannot be controlled. The study of mythology draws on archaeology, ethnology, Orientalism, folk psychology, and psychoanalysis, which has shown that the heroes and deeds of myths live on in modern times, and that each person has their own private pantheon of dreams. The Oedipus complex, stemming from a child's transfer of aggression to their father, is one example of how ancient myths can influence personal experiences. Infants may feel tension and aggression when separated from their mother's breast. Psychoanalysis can help us to understand the psychological powers that emerge in our dreams and guide us through crises of self-development. The psychoanalyst serves as a modern master of the mythological realm, assisting the hero in overcoming challenges. Mythology and ritual use symbols to help people progress in life, rather than being stuck in infantile fixations. Initiatory images are necessary for the psyche, as seen in the circumcision rituals of the Murngin tribe, and in dreams that reveal these symbols, like a snake biting a boy in the genital region as he progresses from his mother complex. Without effective spiritual aid, there is a high incidence of neuroticism in modern society. The crises of the second portion of life, where death becomes the challenge, have been emphasized by Carl Jung. Life is an ambiguous incursion into a world of solid matter that is soon to disappear, and individuals undergo standard metamorphoses throughout history and civilization. The hero's virtue lies in his ability to solve the riddle of the submission to life. The solution is not to return to the past or to idealize the future, but to create something new. The hero is reborn through accessing the infantile unconscious and unlocking lost potential. Here, the hero must overcome personal limitations, clarify difficulties, and assimilate what Jung refers to as archetypal images. The hero must then teach the lesson of renewed life. Leo Tolstoy's novel Anna Karenina portrays a modern heroine's shattered soul, a common theme in modern romance and Greek tragedy. Tragic art purges emotions through pity and terror, a ritual that once purified communities. Modern literature explores broken figures, and democratic tragedies depict the crucifixion of gods in everyday life without compensation. But in ancient times, myths and fairy tales were viewed as higher than tragedy, as they revealed deeper truths. Comedy celebrates life's wild joy, while tragedy shatters forms and attachments. The business of mythology is to reveal the techniques of the dark path from tragedy to comedy, for the passage of the hero is inward. Life becomes penetrated by an all-sustaining love and knowledge of its own unconquered power, and the world sings with the siren music of the spheres. The Hero and the God. The hero's journey consists of 3 phases: separation, initiation, and return. Heroes venture from the ordinary world to a supernatural one where they conquer fabulous forces, returning to bestow their boons on others. Mythological heroes like Prometheus, Jason, and Aeneas embody this journey, and Buddha's legend of the great struggle exemplifies its difficulties and importance. He ventured out secretly and defeated Kamamara, the god of love and death, through concentration and the 10 perfections. With the goddess Earth bearing witness, he acquired the divine eye of omniscient vision and the understanding of causation. In the Old Testament, Moses received the tablets of the law from God on Mount Sinai. According to Jewish legend, the revelation was accompanied by rumblings and extraordinary phenomena, including the appearance of thousands of angels. This adventure of the hero, which involves a separation from the world, a penetration to a source of power and a life-enhancing return, is a common theme across cultures and spheres of interest. By following heroic figures through the stages of this adventure, we can understand the meaning of these images for contemporary life and appreciate the singleness of the human spirit. The dome of heaven is upheld by diverse creatures, while the hearth in the home or the altar in the temple serves as the hub of the earth's wheel. The door of the sun is the midpoint of the sky, representing the communication of divine energy. Through it, God descends and man ascends. Mythology invests human existence with symbolic suggestion, marking hills, groves, and landmarks with supernatural protectors and special shrines. Temples designed to simulate the world horizon signify the miracle of perfect centeredness, serving as a support for fruitful meditation. Ancient cities and world religions are often centered around a mother city, such as Western Christendom around Rome and Islam around Mecca. The world navel is omnipresent, yielding the world's plenitude of both good and evil. Mythology culminates in the recognition of a transcendent force, perceived through all and worthy of our profound obeisance, surpassing all pairs of opposites. Chapter 1. Departure. The Call to Adventure. A princess loses her golden ball, and a talking frog offers to retrieve it in exchange for her companionship. After the frog fulfills its promise, the princess forgets about it. This marks the beginning of the princess's adventure, as the frog's appearance symbolizes the call to adventure and the start of adolescence. The frog symbolizes the unconscious and is often the carrier of destiny. The frog brings up the ball in its mouth, representing the powers of the abyss. The herald of the adventure represents the repressed instinctual fecundity within ourselves. In mythological adventures, a figure often appears as a guide and marks a new period in the hero's life. The hero faces something familiar to the unconscious, but unknown and frightening to the conscious, and they may then find their familiar occupations unfruitful. Gautama Shakyamuni, the future Buddha, was protected from all knowledge of age, sickness, death, or monkhood. However, the gods showed him signs of aging, disease, death, and a monk. This marked the first stage of the hero's journey, known as the call to adventure, where the hero's destiny summons them to a fateful region of treasure and danger, represented by a fluid and polymorphous place. Refusing the call to adventure has negative consequences in both myths and real life, for it leads to a meaningless existence. It arises from a desire to hold on to one's own interests, rather than embracing the uncertainty of the future. Refusing the call turns the divine being into a source of terror, as seen in the myth of Apollo and Daphne. Dr. Jung had a dream similar to this, where a young man was trapped in a magic circle like a tree rooted to the ground. Those who hesitate may experience a providential revelation if they integrate new forces, while deliberate refusal can lead to transformation and resolution of the problem on a new level. The story of Prince Kamar al-Zaman and Princess Budur from the Arabian Nights features a prince who refuses to marry due to his negative views of women, despite his father's repeated demands. When his father seeks advice from his minister, they decide to address the matter in a public forum, hoping to shame the prince into marriage. However, the prince insults his father and is imprisoned in a tower. Similarly, in China, the daughter of King Gazur refuses all marriage proposals and is locked up by her father out of concern for her well-being. The hero and heroine are destined to be together, but face obstacles that require a miracle to overcome. The first encounter in the hero's journey is with a protective figure who may provide the adventurer with an amulet for their upcoming challenges. Examples of these figures can be found in various cultures and mythologies, such as the Spider-Woman in Southwest American Indian myths, who provides a charm called the Feather of the Alien Gods for protection. Fairy godmothers and helpful crones are also common figures in European fairy tales. These figures represent the benevolent power of destiny, reassuring the hero that paradise can be maintained and present difficulties overcome. Supernatural helpers are another common figure in myths and fairy tales. They may take various forms, such as a wizard, shepherd, or guide. Examples of masculine guides include Mephistopheles in Goethe's Faust, Virgil in Dante's Divine Comedy, and Hermes, Mercury, Thoth, or the Holy Ghost. The crossing of the first threshold. Guided by the personifications of his destiny, the hero then faces the threshold guardian at the entrance to the zone of power, representing the limits of his current sphere of existence. Mythologies of dangerous and deceitful beings populate these regions, reflecting the individual's unconscious desires and fears. Examples include shape-shifting ogres like Dyadushka Vodyanoi from Russian folklore and Pan, the Greek god. The Threshold Guardian warns against advancing beyond established bounds, but only by doing so can the individual enter a new zone of experience. In one story, a young prince named Prince Five Weapons, armed with 5 weapons, enters a forest despite being warned of an ogre named Sticky Hair, who kills every man he sees. The ogre confronts the prince, and the prince uses all his weapons on the ogre, but they all stick to the ogre's hair. The prince then tells the ogre that he is not afraid, and reveals that he possesses the weapon of knowledge. The ogre, afraid of the weapon of knowledge, lets the prince go. The prince is later revealed to be the future Buddha in an earlier incarnation. Sticky Hair was a symbol of the world of the senses, which was subdued by the future Buddha using the divine thunderbolt of knowledge. The monster of phenomenality was dispelled, and the Buddha became divine. The wall of paradise conceals God, and is made of the coincidence of opposites. The hero, released from ego, passes through the walls of the world, leaving ego behind. Often the hero will now enter the belly of the whale, which represents the idea of rebirth after passing through a magical threshold. The hero is swallowed into the unknown and seemingly dies, instead of conquering the threshold's power. This motif is present in stories from many cultures. The hero's passage through the threshold corresponds to the entrance into a temple, where the hero undergoes a metamorphosis and remembers their immortal nature through a life-renewing act. Chapter 2. Initiation. The Trials and the Goddess. The hero must endure trials with the aid of supernatural helpers in a dreamlike world. An example is the myth of Psyche's quest for Cupid, where she performs tasks like sorting seeds and retrieving supernatural beauty from the underworld. Similarly, shamans from the far north undertake perilous adventures to recover the lost souls of the sick. During a Lap shaman's ceremonial trance, he views the sacred mountains and faces the lord of the underworld. Women attend to him and try to guess his location in the yonder world. Upon returning, he declares the cause of illness and sacrifice to be made. The shaman's journey includes obstacles and mastery of the underworld's lord. The medicine man is often seen as either neurotic or psychotic, and his art makes visible the symbolic fantasy systems present in the psyche of every adult member of their society. The Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent to the netherworld offers the oldest account of passage through the gates of metamorphosis. Inanna abandons heaven and earth and descends to the netherworld, where she faces many obstacles, including being stripped of her clothing at each of the 7 gates. The ordeal deepens the problem of the first threshold. Can the ego die? Many dragons must be slain, and barriers must be repeatedly passed. All come with victories, ecstasies, and glimpses of wonder beyond. The ultimate adventure within the hero's journey is often depicted as a mystical marriage of the hero's soul with the queen goddess. For example, in an Irish fairy tale, a prince overcame obstacles to reach the Lady of Tubba Tinty, resting with her for 6 days and nights. The Universal Mother is a mythological figure associated with the nurturing and protecting qualities of the cosmos, and is reflected in the child's relationship with its mother. The image of the Universal Mother is utilized in various religious traditions for purging, balancing, and initiating the mind into the nature of the visible world. We find this in the Tantric books of India and in the worship of the Cosmic Mother by the Hindu mystic Ramakrishna. The goddess is known only to those who have attained the highest realization, appearing in forms suitable to lesser men. It would be a terrible accident for one to behold her fully without spiritual preparation. Women represent the totality of mythology, guiding the hero to the sublime climax of sensuous adventure. However, deficient eyes and ignorance reduce her to inferior states, and only the hero who understands and accepts her can become the king of her created world. An example of this is seen in the story of Niall, one of the 5 sons of the Irish king Eochaid, who encounters the goddess of royal rule disguised as an old woman guarding a well. He alone offers her a kiss, which transforms her into a beautiful woman, and reveals her as the goddess who will grant him supreme power. It is the final test of the hero to win the boon of love from the goddess embodied in every woman. However, there will be temptations that may lead the hero to abandon their quest, and a woman can also be a metaphor for such temptations. The stories of saints, such as Peter and Bernard of Clairvaux, indicate that even religious figures face temptation and must resist it. Even in a monastery or a hermit's life, temptations can arise, as demonstrated in the story of St. Anthony. The seeker of life beyond life must therefore press beyond the woman and surpass the temptations of her call. Atonement with the Father. In the next step, the hero must confront and be initiated by whatever holds the ultimate power in their life. In many myths and stories, this is a father figure who has power over life and death. The 18th century theologian Jonathan Edwards used vivid imagery of water and fire to threaten his congregation with God's wrath. He warned them that they were hanging by a thread over the pit of hell, but also spoke of the possibility of salvation through the mercy and grace of God. Balancing images of mercy and justice are common in mythologies. For example, the dancing god Shiva's extended right hand holds a drum, symbolizing time, while his left holds a flame, representing the destruction of the created world. His posture symbolizes the syllable Om, and his hair contains symbols of death and birth. Shiva's expression is that of the unmoved mover, present within the world's bliss and pain. In Greek mythology, the story of Phaethon shows the consequences of reckless behavior. He travels to the palace of his father, the sun god Helios, and borrows his solar chariot. Despite his father's warnings, Phaethon drove the solar chariot too high and too low, burning and freezing it. Initiation involves teaching the techniques, duties, and privileges of a vocation, while also readjusting a candidate's emotional relationship to parental figures. The mystagogue father figure only entrusts symbols of office to those who have been purged of inappropriate infantile attachments and can exercise their powers impartially. The ideal initiate can guide others through the illusions of good and evil to an understanding of cosmic law. Primitive initiation rituals feature archetypal nightmares of the ogre father and require boys to confront their fears and undertake a journey to neighbouring clans. They learn about their totem ancestors, the existing order of the world, and are introduced to an object world that compensates for the loss of the mother. The male phallus becomes the central point of their imagination, replacing the female breast. In some cultures, the final rite of passage for boys is the circumcision of their foreskin, a painful and frightening experience. The ceremony takes place at night, with the sound of bull roarers heard from all sides. The circumciser uses a small flint knife, and the boy is lifted onto a shield. The operation is performed quickly, and the boy is then attended to and congratulated by the men. In Greek mythology, Zeus's cry to his son Dionysos symbolizes the initiatory second birth. Dionysos, who was also called Him of the Double Door, represented the renewal of vegetation, the moon, the sun, and the soul. Similar myths and rites, including the deaths and resurrections of figures like Tammuz, Adonis, and Osiris, can be found in various cultures. The Christian Church incorporates these themes in its mythology, such as the second birth of baptism and the eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood. The sun in the underworld rules both the dead and the living, sustaining life from the sky and the earth. This deity embodies contradictions such as good and evil, death and life, and pain and pleasure. The great divinity Viracocha of prehistoric Peru represents this contradictory father figure as both the universal god and a beggar. Viracocha embodies the traits of a sun god and storm god, seen in other mythologies such as Hebrew, Navajo, Greek, and Indian. The hero's journey involves breaking through to perfect knowledge and understanding the tragedies of existence. The story of Job in the Bible demonstrates that the will of God is beyond human categories, and the hero becomes one who can face the greater revelation. The son who truly knows the Father sees the world as a perpetual manifestation of the divine. Apotheosis. Avalokiteshvara, the lotus-bearer, is a beloved bodhisattva in Mahayana Buddhism. He is known for his compassion and his vow to bring all creatures to enlightenment before entering the void. He represents the divine state that a hero achieves after transcending ignorance, holding the world and encompassing pain and pleasure with profound repose. In China and Japan, he is represented as both male and female, and is considered the Madonna of the Far East. Androgynous characters such as Avalokiteshvara are common in mythology and represent a mystery that goes beyond objective experience into a symbolic realm where duality is left behind. Gods in various mythologies are depicted as androgynous, such as the god of the Pueblo Zuni people of New Mexico, Awanawilona. In some African and Melanesian tribes, ancestral images depict both the breasts of the mother and the beard and penis of the father on one being. These androgynous representations symbolize the mystery of creation, the breaking of the one into the two and then the many, and the generation of new life through the reconjunction of the two. The World Redeemer teaches that God is love, and all are his children. Worship techniques and organizational devices are insignificant unless they support this major teaching. Unfortunately, these trivial matters have reduced the father image back to the dimensions of the totem. To understand a world religion, we must turn to the Buddha, who teaches that peace is at the heart of everything. The Bodhisattva includes, regards, and dwells within every sentient being, and we are all reflexes of the image of the Bodhisattva. Even those we perceive as enemies are also God. The Bodhisattva myth unites male and female in life and release from life. The hero realizes he is what he came to find. The temptations of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree express the interdependence of the inner and outer worlds, and the similarity between ancient mythological doctrine and the modern Freudian school. Psychoanalysis cures individuals of unreal terrors and ambivalent attractions, while Buddhist religious teaching aims to detach the individual from delusion altogether through the Buddhist Eightfold Path to reach nirvana. This world is nirvana for they in whom desire, hostility, and delusion are dead. At this point, the hero has achieved the ultimate goal of the quest. All the previous steps serve to prepare and purify the hero for this step, since in many myths the boon is something transcendent, like the elixir of life or the Holy Grail. Humor often enters the story in this step, serving to transcend the gods as icons and transport the mind and spirit to a comparatively rarefied zone where all existence is transmuted into the semblance of a dream. For example, in the Hindu story of the battle between the Titans and the gods for the liquor of immortality, the gods proposed a temporary truce so that they could churn the milky ocean for the nectar of deathlessness. In this way, mythological stories serve as a bridge between the mundane world and the transcendent realm of the divine, allowing humans to explore deeper aspects of their consciousness and understanding of the world. The gods and goddesses guard the imperishable, which the hero seeks. The elixir of life is embodied by various deities, and only the proven are granted access to it. If the gods are too cautious, the hero may need to trick them. For example, in Maori mythology, Maui tricked Mahuika to obtain the treasure of fire, which he gave to the world. Similarly, Gilgamesh sought the watercress of immortality, but the goddess Siduri Sabitu closed the gates to paradise to him. She advised him to enjoy life's mortal pleasures, but he persisted and was instructed to seek the ferryman Ursanapi. After defeating the ferryman's attendants, Gilgamesh met Utnapishtim, who revealed the secret of the plant growing at the bottom of the cosmic sea. Gilgamesh retrieved the plant, but lost it to a serpent while he slept, leaving him disappointed. Humans have sought physical immortality through things like the Fountain of Youth, but true immortality is experienced when one's view is no longer obstructed by the body and personality. Spiritual growth involves breaking through such personal limitations. Chapter 3. Return. The crossing of the return threshold. After accomplishing the hero's quest, the adventurer must return to humanity with their trophy to renew the community, nation, planet, or worlds. However, the responsibility of returning the boon is refused by many heroes. The hero may require aid to come back from their supernatural quest, and refusal to return could result in consequences. Raven from an Eskimo tale is an example of this. Raven enters a whale's belly and becomes its prisoner after being greedy and breaking a tube, causing the whale to die. He escapes when the whale is cut open by the villagers. The hero embarks on a quest into an unknown world, completing their adventure and returning to the world of the familiar. Though seemingly distinct, the two realms are actually one, and the hero's journey involves exploring this forgotten dimension. The hero must face the loss of personal identity and assimilate into the otherworldly realm. However, upon returning to the known world, the hero may find it difficult to communicate their newfound wisdom due to the challenge of expressing the ineffable in language. Despite these obstacles, the hero must strive to share their knowledge with others. The story of Rip Van Winkle illustrates the challenges faced by a returning hero. Unknowingly, he entered the other realm and returned to find everything changed. He struggled to restore order, facing accusations and hostility from those he encountered. Similarly, the Irish hero Oisin spent happy years in the land of youth, but chose to return to his homeland, despite being warned of the consequences. He touched the soil upon his return, and was instantly transformed into a blind old man. This story highlights the challenge of maintaining a cosmic standpoint in the face of immediate pain or joy. Throughout history, supernatural heroes have been insulated from the ground to preserve their magical power. Insulation is necessary because contact with the earth can discharge the magical power, causing harm to others. This taboo is demonstrated in modern-day examples such as dressing for dinner or wearing a Roman collar. Returning heroes must survive the impact of their journey, as Rip Van Winkle and Oisin experienced a loss of self. However, Kamar al-Zaman of Arabian Nights returned with a talisman that allowed him to retain his self-assurance. Master of the Two Worlds. The Master can move between time and causal perspectives without mixing their principles, as seen in the Transfiguration of Christ, where Jesus reveals himself as the beloved Son to Peter, James and John on a mountain. In the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, Prince Arjuna, who is the friend and disciple of the universal God, Krishna, an incarnation of Vishnu, asks Krishna to reveal his immutable self. Krishna shows him his divine forms, explaining that he cannot be seen with human eyes. Krishna thus grants Arjuna a divine eye to see his sovereign power, and reveals his supreme form as Vishnu, Lord of the universe, bedecked with celestial ornaments and armed with divine weapons. Arjuna sees the universe gathered together as one and is overcome with wonder. Krishna imparts wisdom to Arjuna before battle and reveals this vision to him. This anthropomorphic vision, known as the cosmic man, provides a glimpse of the essential nature of the cosmos and represents the fate of mankind. Symbols are vehicles of communication and should not be mistaken for their final reference. The hero champions becoming rather than being, recognizing that changelessness is not the same as permanent being. The myth aims to reconcile individual consciousness with the universal will and allow it to achieve the realization of the true relationship of time to imperishable life. To do this, one must release attachment to the ego and surrender to the living God. The hero embodies this insight and is the conscious vehicle of the divine law. Chapter 4. The Keys. So, in summary, the hero's journey is as thus. The hero is lured away from his common life to the threshold of adventure, where he encounters and battles a shadowy guardian. He proceeds into a kingdom of darkness where he faces magical forces and undergoes a supreme ordeal to gain a reward. This reward may be a union with a goddess mother, atonement with the Father Creator, or his own divinization. Intrinsically, the reward is an expansion of consciousness. The hero then must return to the threshold, beyond which his powers are lost, to restore the world with the boon he has gained. This is the monomyth, a complex and multi-faced framework that takes on many different forms in various tales and myths. Some stories focus on a few key elements, while others combine multiple cycles into a single narrative. Over time, myths and tales can become distorted or obscured, and their original meaning can be lost. As civilizations evolve and move away from a mythological perspective, older images and themes are often rationalized and reinterpreted to fit contemporary values. In today's world, even iconic figures like Jesus Christ have been reduced to historical figures with moral lessons rather than the divine beings they were once thought to be. Interpreting the poetry of myth as biography, history, or science leads to its death. As science and history, mythology is absurd. When a civilization reinterprets its mythology in this way, the link between the symbols and reality is dissolved, and temples become museums. To bring the images back to life, one must seek illuminating hints from the inspired past, for these hints reveal the permanently human meaning of the vast areas of half-dead iconography. As one final example, the rite of baptism symbolizes the journey of the soul into the mythological realm and its return to the physical body. The more common secondary interpretation of baptism as washing away original sin neglects the rebirth idea, and thus it neglects the full system of correspondences between mythological symbols and our own adventures of the soul. Thank you ever so much for making it to the end of this video. If you'd like to know what happens next, in the next video we shall inquire into the second part of Campbell's book, which is titled The Cosmogonic Cycle. There, Campbell will make further efforts to excavate the distorted truths of ancient religious doctrines, with particular focus on the processes of creation and enlightenment. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing with a friend, and look to the description for other ways to support the channel and the creation of more videos like this one. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.